My name is Miracle. I am 20. I was about to say 23, but I just realised I turned 24 last week, so I'm 24. I got engaged on my birthday. It made me feel really good. Like, for the first time in my life, I actually felt like I was worth something. I was like, oh my god, like someone actually finds me valuable enough to buy me an expensive ring and yeah, make it official. I was very happy. Too happy, in fact. So I was sexually abused from the age of 5. That's the youngest I can remember, or that's as far back as I can remember. From the age of 5, by the main person was by a family friend, but the difference in my story is I wasn't just abused by one person. I was abused by multiple people in every single stage and year of my life. I went through some form of sexual abuse from the age of 5 up until I was about 15, and it was by different people. So yeah, from the age of 5, that's the youngest I can remember being abused. And the main person was like someone who was very, very, very close to my family, to my parents, and it was someone who I was always at their house. My parents wouldn't feel a way to leave me there, and it all started off with him being very, very friendly, very kind, and he was always at home, and my parents were always at work. His wife was always at work, so, and conveniently he lived literally like just round the corner from my house, so my parents were like, oh, go and chill with this person, or go and stay there. So I didn't think anything of it, and I couldn't even tell you how it started, but from a stroke in the hair to, oh, come and sit on my lap and stuff like that, and it became very, very physical. And this was someone that I saw like almost every single day, and for me as a young child, like I never really understood what it meant for like to be sexual abuse, because I was 5, and it just seemed normal to me. And what I realized was that not just him, but I had people in my that lived within my house that after he started doing it to me, and it just seemed really normal to me, because I was like, if everyone's doing the same thing, then it must be a normal thing that's happening to you. So I never really thought that it was a wrong thing. I'd grown up, I think it started like you get groomed, so I'd grown up groomed to believe that this was norm, like this was normal. So round about when I was how old was I? I was 7 or 8. I was in primary school. This was in Nigeria. I was in primary school and my teacher did it. So I remember he was my maths teacher, and he asked me to stay behind after school. I was thinking, I didn't get, you know, he marked my answers wrong on purpose. I was thinking, I compared my answers to everyone else, it was the same answer, so why are you marking me wrong? And he asked me to stay behind after school, so I stayed. He asked my friend and I to stay behind after school. Then he told my friend to go, that he just wanted to talk to me and teach me the work by myself. So I was like, okay. And then he asked me to come to his desk. So I went, and he was like, come and stand in between my legs. So I was thinking, how are you going to teach me work when I'm standing in between your legs? But when you grow up in Africa and you go to school in Africa, your teachers beat you. So if you say no, you're going to get beat. So I was thinking, I don't want this man to beat me. So I went and I stood there like facing the table, so my back was to him. And then he was like, oh, work out this solution for me. And I just remember, so cringe right now, but I just remember him like touching my neck and moving his hand through my back and was like, oh, you've got a spot here. Oh, why have you got a spot here? And his hand kept going lower and lower down my back, and I couldn't say no. Then I thought, oh well, if my teacher's doing it and it always happens at home, then that this is a normal thing. So I didn't think anything of it. I just stood there, he did his thing, blah blah blah. Then when I left, I went and told my friend. I was like, oh no, what happened was my dad actually came to school to look for me. Literally, like, within the space of a minute of him finishing whatever it was, my dad walked into the hallway where my classroom was. And I was thinking, like, I wish my dad had just, like, came a minute early.
Wow.
I wish my dad came a minute early, at least, like, to even see him do the act. So as soon as I came out, I saw my dad and I was like, I didn't know what to say. He was like, why are you staying longer in school? And I was like, oh, because my teacher said I had to. So, because my house was literally a 5-minute walk from school, my dad was like, okay, my friends were waiting for me. He said, okay, I'm going to go home. You can come home with your friends. And then I told my friend, I was like, you'll never believe what Mr. So-and-so just did. And I just said it as like it was a normal thing, because in my mind, if everyone else, like if everyone that I know is doing this to me and my teacher's even doing it as well, then it must be normal. Like, it means everyone, like, it must happen to everyone. So when I told my friend was like, huh? Like, he did that to you? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, Miracle, that's not normal. And I was like, I was looking at her like, no, you're not normal, because what, are you trying to tell me that it doesn't happen to you? And she was like, no, it doesn't. So I left it, forgot about it. The next day when I went into school, everyone in the class, my friend had gone and spread it and told everyone. So everyone was looking at me weird when I came into school. And I was like, I walked into my classroom, everyone was whispering and talking, and I felt like, I was like, have I done something wrong? And then I started to get angry and upset because my friends would, like, they were sitting away from me. Everyone was treating me like I was like I had a disease. And I was thinking, I only just said something that I thought was right, and I thought was normal. And I just remember my teacher, because I started arguing with my friend. I was like, why would you tell people? Now look what everyone is, like, doing to me. And my teacher told us to kneel down. And then she was like, what's the problem? And my friend said, oh, Miracle said that the maths teacher did this and that and that. And she was like, she sent me down to the principal's office, and I got in so much trouble in school that day. And from that day, like, I think that's when I actually realised, oh my God, like, I've actually, like, this is wrong, number one, and I have done something wrong by telling anyone, because I got in trouble for saying something and no one believed me. Although the next day when I came back to school, he wasn't there, so it means that he got fired, like, he never came back. So they knew that what he did was wrong, but then they told me not to tell my parents. If I told my parents, I'll get in trouble. If I said anything to anyone else, that I'll get beats or whatever it was. So it was at that point where I realised, actually, like, this thing is actually a serious thing. And at my small age of 8, 9, like, I sat down in my room and I thought about, okay, so the man next door who's, like, really close to my parents does it to me. There's 2 men that live in my house who do it to me. There's, like, the teacher had done it to me. There's a boy and a girl, brother and sister, who, like, because when I was younger I was very bubbly, like the kind of person that I would sleep at everyone's house. I never want to go home with my parents. I always want to be with my friends. So one of the people who I used to sleep over at their house, brother and sister, they thought it was very pleasurable to take advantage of me at my small age and make me do, you know, fulfill all their whatever desires that they had. And I started to, like, take account of every single person that had actually done something physical to me. And I was like, so every one of them knows that this is wrong, but then they still take pleasure in doing it to me. And I just wondered, at that point, I asked myself, I was like, do I have a sign on my forehead that when people see me, they just, like, it says molest? And I was thinking, this is not normal. But yet I still didn't say anything to anyone because of my experience in school. I thought, if I now go and say something, look at how I was treated in school, look at, like, no one ever gets sent to the principal's office because she's crazy. And I was like, I got sent there. If I go and say this to someone else, like, you know, I'm gonna get in trouble. And I never said anything. So I remember another time where the lady whose husband, like, lived next door, who used to do, like, was the main person who abused me. I remember going to their house one day and she had her, like, an uncle come and visit her. Now, mind you, this man is, like, almost like a granddad. And she had a friend as well at the house, and she said to me, oh, let me go and drop my friend off, I'll leave you with my uncle. And, you know, this was someone who had just met me for the first time, and she left me in his care, and he did the same thing. at that point, like, honestly, I was convinced that, okay, yeah, like, this was bound to happen to you all your life. So, you know, you just have to accept it, and, you know, don't say anything, don't do anything, just keep it moving. I don't want to go into the many number of people and other stories about how or when it's happened, but I moved from Nigeria here to London, and we had like this family friend who, you know, I always used to go around to their house as well. And it's at that point that I realised, okay, something is, like, I knew something was wrong, but I was like, I thought I left that back home. Like, how can you follow me to a different country? And I was like, okay, I went to visit, he came, and there was like 3 of us laying in a bed, and he specifically targeted me. And I remember telling one of the girls, I asked her, I was like, does this man do this to you? She was like, no. And the next night I told her to swap places with me, and because I usually slept in the middle, and she slept in the middle, and he came into a room to obviously say goodnight to us, and, you know, ended up grouping her because he thought I was in the middle. And I think I was like 12, 13 at this point, and I went back home, like, and I think I cried. I was just like, God, why is it always me? Like, what do people see about me that makes them want to do this to me? And I just never thought that I could tell my parents, because I don't know, I just didn't think that they would believe me. And coming from Africa as well, it's just, there's certain things that you don't tell your mum and dad, or there's certain things that you just don't speak to your parents about, and I never thought that this would be like something that I should sit down and say to them. Anyway, fast forward to like moving forward in my life, I wasn't the kind of person who, like, after it happened to me, some people become very like anti, like, oh, you know, don't touch me, or like they go on a different spectrum where they just like become wild. And I was like on the spectrum where I didn't like people touching me, I didn't like people hugging me, and no one realized why. Like, I'm very awkward when it comes to hugging people. Now I'm a lot better, but even if you're a girl or you're a guy, hugging me, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, don't touch me. If you want to say hello to me from a distance. And I'm very, like, usually very defensive. And you know, it drove me to that spectrum, and it also drove me to another spectrum where I was just like, I'm just gonna date every single, just for the sake of dating you. Like, sometimes I'll date a guy for 5 days and then forget that I was even dating him, just because, like, even if I don't see you, as long as I feel like I have your heart in my hands. So I was willing to, like, just, you know, sometimes I'll just date people like, oh yeah, I've got this boyfriend, I've got that boyfriend, but I was just doing it because I wanted you to feel some sort of pain. So I wouldn't get physical with you, but just the fact that I knew that you liked me was enough. I feel like I'll mess with your feelings and I'll mess with your heart because I was hurt. And all the time I was doing that, I had no understanding that, you know, it was because of what had happened to me. I just wanted every single person to feel exactly the same pain I felt when I realized, actually, this is not normal. I'll never be able to, you know, let's say I get married, like, how do I sit down and tell my husband, oh, actually, this and this and this and this and this number of people have done this to me, so, you know, you've got to love me with all of that. Like, what guy is going to accept me with all of that baggage? So I just wanted every single guy that I could to pay for anything and everything that I'd ever gone through. And, you know, I got to a point where, like, I don't know if this is normal for people who have been abused, but I was attracted to only older men. Like, I wouldn't, if you were under a certain age, I wouldn't entertain you, I wouldn't speak to you. You had to be like over a certain age for me to speak to you. And I basically wanted the older men to pay because it was mostly older people that had abused me all my life. So I was like, well, if I can get you to like me and get you to fall for me and get you to do God knows what for me, then at least I'm hurting you. But I didn't know that in that process I was actually hurting myself. So all this time that everything happened, I got to a point in my life when I was about 14, 15 where I thought, okay, do you know what, no one knows, I won't say anything to anyone, and I'll just, I got to the point that I've always known God all my life. I've grown up in church, my parents are ministers, and I was like, okay, God, I really want to get to know you on a deeper level, and I'll just, you know, forget that anything ever happened and just start a brand new life. And at this point I was very, very close to a family member of mine, like extremely close to him, but he was back home in Nigeria and I was here. And, you know, this was the times where there was MSN and Yahoo Messenger and all that stuff, and I had a very, very active online presence where I would speak to random people, and like I don't think people understand how powerful the internet is, especially when you're a young, like you need to be aware of like allowing young children on the internet, because I was just like willing and ready to talk to strangers, you know, on the internet, just adding people randomly, and like I was so messed up that I didn't realize I could actually be hurting myself. Like some of these people that I'm meeting, I'll go and meet people at random times, like people that I don't even know, all because in my mind I'm trying to hurt you. And I remember my uncle introduced me to, I can't even comprehend how this worked back in the day, but introduced me to a couple of his friends online. And mind you, my uncle is like, let's say he was in his like 30s, let's say he was like 30, 37 or so, and I'm speaking to his friends online, and I was like, what, 15? And I decided to go and meet. So I met his friend. There was a man, 2 women. They were all brothers and sisters. So I decided that the sisters lived in Nigeria and the brother lived here. So obviously we've been talking online for the longest time, and then he was like, oh, I would like you to come and meet my family. And I was like, oh, that would be lovely. I never thought, I think about it now and I was just like, you're so stupid. Like I never thought that something bad would happen out of like me going to meet this random person online. And he asked me to come to a certain meeting point, and I was like, I was in college this time. I was in my first year of college. I was 16, sorry. So I went to go meet him at this place. He asked me to meet him at McDonald's, so I went there, and he was like, oh, okay, when you come, we're gonna go and meet my wife, my family, because everyone's expecting you, blah blah blah. And it seemed so genuine to me, and I got to a point where I couldn't even judge people's characters, because like my mind was just so deluded, and I just believed anything. So I went, and then he was like, oh, by the way, I'm just gonna go and use the toilet in this place down here, so come with me. And I could have thought, why didn't you use the toilet in McDonald's? But I didn't think anything of it. So I went with him, and he went into a B&B. So I sat in the thing, and he went to go and use the toilet. And when he came back, I saw him talking to the owner of it. So I was like, oh, maybe he knows the person, or maybe he's come here, or I don't know. I just sat there. And then he came back and he goes, oh, Miracle, my wife, so we've got 2 cars, the other car's at the mechanic. My wife has got the other car, and she's going to come and pick me up from here so we can go to my house and you meet my kids and my wife. So I've just told this guy that I'm going to pay for a room just for an hour until my wife comes and gets me. So let's go upstairs and let's go and wait. And I was like, oh, but I thought your wife was already at home. Then again, I still didn't believe. So I was just like, okay, it's fine. We'll go upstairs and we'll wait. So we went upstairs, and he sat on the bed, and like I sat on the edge, and I was just like, it started to hit me. I was like, okay, you're in a room, in a bed and breakfast with a stranger who you've met online through your uncle, and you don't even know whether your uncle noticed people. He just randomly told you this is his friend in London. And I sat there, and I was like, it was hitting me slowly that, you know, I can't run out. Like, he's got the key. So I just sat there, and he goes to me, oh, I want to be as close to you as your uncle is. And I was like, yeah, but I already have my uncle that's close to me. I thought we were going to see your family. And then at that moment, his wife called him, and then he was like, oh, I'm just making my way home. He made no mention of me. He just spoke to his wife as normal. He made no mention that I was there, didn't tell his wife his location. I think at that point I realised that I've put myself into a ditch, and I just packed my stuff, and I was like, your wife doesn't know that I'm coming to your house. Like, why did you bring me here? And I decided that I was going to run out. I was like, I ran towards the door, and I just realised, I was like, wait, this man, there's no key there, the key's in his pocket. How am I going to get out of this? Like, what am I going to do? And as I was just going towards the door, this man ran up behind me, pushed me on the bed, did whatever, and literally, like, the key, I don't even know how or when or what, but the keys fell out. And where I got the strength to push this man off me, I don't know. I pushed him, got the key, took my bag, and I ran. Like, my top was ripped. I ran out of the place. I ran to the bus stop. I was in tears. I was crying. And like, so I basically ran, and I just ran into a bus. I don't know what bus I ran into. And I came off the bus, I found myself somewhere. And I think it was in that moment that I said, like, okay, enough is enough. You're 15 years of age. This shouldn't be happening to you anymore. This is wrong. not like I didn't know it was wrong in time past, but I think at that moment I was just like, you've put yourself in some very vulnerable situations. Whatever's happened to you in the past shouldn't take away like your knowledge or your wisdom of self-awareness. But at that point in time, I was just like, God, I need you to kind of change something in me, because I can't keep going through life, you know, going through this. And I realized as well that I just didn't know how to say no. Because if I just told him, actually, you said you're going to meet me here, so why are we going there? If I just questioned, I'd forgotten how to question any and everything. I was just like, yes to everything. If I find myself in a position where I'm vulnerable, I won't say anything. And I used to ask myself, why didn't you ever say no? Why didn't you ever push the person? Why didn't you ever say stop? And from there, that was the beginning of me blaming myself. I went through like stages where I disliked myself. I disliked what I look like. I started starving myself because I just thought maybe, you know, it's because I'm curvy. Older men like curvy girls. I started to do this thing called water fasting. I became so skinny, like I became anorexic and bulimic. When I eat, I will vomit. I didn't like myself, and I didn't want other people to like me. And I always used to blame myself, like, why would, you know, I never said no. I never tried to stop them, and I also never told anyone, so it must be my fault. And so it got to a point where like I became anorexic and I became bulimic because I didn't like myself, and I didn't want other people to now find me attractive. And it got to a point where I'll eat and I'll immediately throw up, and that became the norm for me, to the point where my body wasn't receptive to food. However, on the outside, you will see me, you know, everyone's like, oh my God, you've lost so much weight, you're so pretty, you're so this. And, you know, at this time I was still in church, I was singing, I would minister so powerfully, and I'll come home and have to deal with all of this. And even my parents got to a point where they were like, why do you vomit everywhere? Why do you not retain food? And all this time they had no, like, I'll just get so angry and have outbursts and I'll cry. And they just didn't understand what was wrong with me. And I didn't say anything. I remember one day I just told my friend, I was like, if I don't stop doing this, I'm gonna die. And it got to a point where my body was repellent to food. Like, even if I drank something, it didn't stay. As soon as I ate, I would throw up. And you know, you get to that point, and if you know about bulimia, you know, you can't retain food, so you have to get fed with a tube. And it was literally almost getting there, and I just said to myself, I'm not trying to die like this. I'm not trying to die. You know, people on the outside would think, oh, she's such a great minister, she's such a this, she's such a that. But on the inside, when I die, I know that I know the reason why I've died. So I told my friend, I was like, I want to go to a hospital and I want to speak to someone. And I went, and my doctor kind of referred me to a psychologist. And I remember going to my first counselling session, and the woman was just speaking to me, asking me questions, and every time she asked me questions, I would have to go back to the past, go and think about, oh, this happened and that's why I'm like this. And like, it wasn't pretty for me. I was like, I can't. So after the second session, I was like, I'm not trying to remember anything that's happened to me in the past anymore. Like, I'm done with this. And literally I left, and that day I said to God, I was like, God, if you can't heal me, then I'm not ready to be healed. I'm not trying to I don't want to remember these things from the past anymore. You know, I don't want to hold on to it anymore. Like, it's held me down for too long, and I don't want to die. That was my thought. Like, I don't want to die. And from that day, I don't know where I got the strength from to even like carry on, but something on the inside of me just shifted. And you know, it's been a struggle. It's been a struggle. But from that day onwards, I was just like, do you know what? I'm gonna work and strive to actually make myself better and be more healthy. And you know, I started uni. Everything was going fine. And in my first year of uni, I remember like I went to a prayer meeting, and this girl started talking about the Holy Spirit was leading her to speak about people who had been abused and they need to forgive. And I had this outburst of anger, and I was just like, forgive who? For what? Do you want to know how many people have abused me? Do you want to know? Do you want me to start counting the number? Because it wasn't just one person. It wasn't just two people. even people in my family who my parents trusted and left me with felt the need to do that to me. So will you talk about forgive? How do I even start forgiving someone who is a family member? Or how do I even start forgiving someone who is supposed to be a pastor? Someone who preaches to people on a Sunday, daily basis, preaching the word, doing evangelism. How do you expect me to forgive someone who's supposed to know the word of God and is supposed to preach the word of God, but still did that to me? So I was just like, I'm not forgiving no one. There's no way I will forgive. And you know, we let it sit, and I just, that night God was like, Miracle, you need to forgive. And he told me to message each and every one of them, and I was like, Lord, you want me to message? What do I say? Oh, hi, you molested me when I was young. I just want to say I forgive you. But anyway, the next morning I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do this. And I messaged them. I had them on my Facebook, and I was like, you know, I forgive you for everything you did to me when I was younger. Some of them were like, oh wow, like, we're so sorry. And the main guy who, like, the main perpetrator, the main person, you know, I messaged him and I was like, I just want to say that I forgive you, and I just want to say that everything that I've ever spoken against you in anger, or your children or anything, I just want you to know that I forgive you and I take it back. And this man messaged me back. He was like, my family and I were blessed. I've never done anything like that to you. I've never molested anybody. You're a liar. And in that point, I was broken. I was like, God, you asked me to message these people, so I'm just gonna sit there and imagine that someone did something to me. I'm just gonna sit there and make it up. And I was like, wow. I didn't know how to feel, but I just said, you know what, I'll leave it. And I remember going back home, like, it took me back to a time where I went back home to visit with my family, and I bumped into this guy, and he looked at me and he was like, oh, I miss you. And I was like, so in my mind, I imagined that scenario, like you telling me that you missed me. It was something that I imagined. And I just thought to myself, do you know what? God said forgive. I don't know how this forgiveness thing is going to work, but I felt like once I said to them, or once I actively messaged and said, you know what, I forgive you, it would do something in me. It would make me feel better. And it did. But it didn't take away the fact that I was insecure. It didn't take away the fact that I was still attracted to older guys. It didn't take away the fact that I needed some sort of validation for someone to love me. And you know, in my first and second year of uni, I found myself in a relationship where I completely adored this guy, because I just felt like, you know, he would validate me. He would make me, you know, make me feel better. He would make me feel secure. I remember the first time ever I decided I'm going to open up to him, and I'm going to tell him that this is what's happened to me, because in my mind I believed that this was the guy for me, would be married. And his words to me were, you're not the only person that has been through that. Are you the only person who has been sexually abused before? And then he said to me, he was like, come let me touch you and give you some good loving so you can get over this nonsense. And I was like, oh. Wow. And in my mind, I tried to justify his words. Oh. I tried to justify his words, and I tried to justify his actions. And I was like, you know what, it's fine. It's okay. He doesn't mean it. He doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't understand what it is. And I stayed in that relationship for almost 3 years. And I lost my voice. Like, even sitting here to speak in front of a camera, like, this guy made me feel like I was stupid and I wasn't worth anything, and there was nothing that I could say that would be meaningful or that could help anyone in this life. But after about 3 years, like, in that process, I feel like God taught me, you need to get your voice back. You have something to say. And there was a point where, whilst I was in that relationship, I watched a video of a girl who had gone through abuse, and she took some pills to kill herself. And I was like, but I'm still alive. And I said, you know what, I wouldn't, like, I'm not perfect, I'm not where I want to be, but I want to be able to tell someone my story and tell them that, look at where I am. You know, I'm not the most perfect individual, but that happening to me it's not pushed me to want to take my own life, because I know that, you know, regardless of how it happens, I'm gonna be great. Like, I'm gonna make something positive out of my life. And all these people who felt the need to do that to me, they will see me and they will see how successful I become. And I watched that video and I was just like, God, you know, I don't know what to do. I don't know how I'm gonna tell, you know, how I'm gonna go and start telling people that I've been abused or whatever it was. But that's what gave me the strength to kind of leave that relationship, because I realized that if I'm going to be able to speak to people, I need to speak to them from a place of healing, from a place where I'm not allowing anyone to validate me but God, from a place where I am secure and I'm not trying to find security in any man, or, you know, that gave me the strength to come out. And I wanted to tell my story, and I obviously had to tell my parents what I had been through. I told my parents I was going to make a video, and they were like, no, this was like 2 years ago. And my parents were like, oh, you know, who's going to marry you? You don't want your husband's family to look at you different, you know. But by the grace of God, today I'm engaged, and the guy I'm engaged to, honestly, like, he probably pushed me and motivated me the most to speak about it. And, you know, I'm here now telling my story to whoever's watching. No matter what's happened to you, whether you've been raped, whether you've been sexually abused, whatever form of abuse that you've been through, it doesn't define who you are. It doesn't define you as a person. There's so much more in you. There's a place where God is taking each and every one of us. And I always say, your past only makes you who you are now. You don't have to identify with what's happened to you anymore, because you're a new creation in Christ. And, you know, I'm here now. I'm not perfect, but I'm able to stand and I'm able to tell my story because God actually gave me victory. And one thing that I love about everyone else who has spoken before is that they say, I'm not a victim, I'm a victor. Whatever's happened to me, it's only made me who I am now. And I just want to encourage you to come out, share your story, speak about what's happened to you and liberate yourself. It's not going to be an easy process, but by God's grace, like, you can make it. I'm Miracle S&M, and I am renewed.